Hello, everyone. I thought I would make a video just making a very few comments about this work, the Enchiridion, which means handbook of Epictetus. This work, I think, is unique in my experience, especially my teaching experience as a philosophy teacher, insofar as it's profound and insightful and a great work of philosophy, and also is, I think, almost immediately comprehensible by anybody. It doesn't take the kind of careful, maybe some background and explanation that reading Plato does, for instance, or the Bhagavad Gita. It is instantly understandable and a great work. So I don't feel that this is the kind of work that I need. I don't feel an obligation to go through it um, in any detail. You just need to read it, and you'll get a lot out of it, as they say. Um, One or two things here and there. He says in the first section, work, therefore, to be able to say to every harsh appearance, you are but an appearance, and not absolutely the thing you appear to be. That's I would say, a very important statement by Epictetus. That is, Epictetus was not only he was essentially a moral philosopher. He was talking about how we should live, how we should deal with life, how we should conduct ourselves. But in the background is I would say, an epistemology, basically a skepticism. That all we experience are basically our own subjective states. I seem to be looking at a tree, and certainly in a sense I am looking at a tree, but really I'm only experiencing my own subjective appearance of a tree. So the notion that I'm somehow comprehending the thing itself is absurd. I'm not. I'm experiencing something, an appearance that is entirely my own. And this goes for all of life. Our interactions with human beings, our interactions with the state and government and law, our personal relationship with the natural world. It's all an experience of appearances, not of the things that they actually appear to be, but of the appearances themselves. So I think, one of this may be similar to the Bhagavad Gita, actually. When one of the lessons is, don't take it all that seriously. It's not important. What's important is you. And that, I think, is very clear. Right? What's important is you, and the things he says that you can control. Uh, you can control. You can't control what other people think of you, or the appearance of what other people think of you. You can't control that. That's something beyond you. You have nothing to do with that. But what you can control is your response to it. That is absolutely in your control, Epictetus would say. So you can't control reputation and honor and wealth. These things are absolutely not something that is within your control. But you can control your response to these things. Not becoming miserable if you're poor, not becoming overjoyed if you're rich, just taking things as they come. There's a wonderful, I'll have to search for it, but there's a wonderful analogy he makes. Banquet, maybe? Uh, no. He talks about, gosh, I wish I could find it. No. No. He talks about being at a banquet or being at a feast or a dinner somewhere towards the beginning. And he's talking about when they pass the plates around full of delicious food, um, that you shouldn't be standoffish and refuse to eat, but then again you shouldn't jump over somebody else to get to the food first. Just wait until it comes to you, till the platter of food comes to you, and take something and eat it. But if the platter doesn't come to you, it doesn't come to you, and that is not a big deal. So you sort of take life as it comes, remembering that it's just an appearance. And what you really want to focus on is not the appearance itself, but your response to it. To keep yourself in a state of peace and calm. Number 28, I always like too. I mean, this goes again to what people think of us. He says, if a person gave your body to any stranger he met on his way, you would certainly be angry. And do you feel no shame in handing over your own mind to be confused and mystified by anyone who happens to verbally attack you? I mean, we would, if somebody took possession of our bodies, we would be outraged. But we're constantly handing people over our minds, right? We're letting them affect us. We're letting things affect us, and you know, one might say that that's just being a human being. And oh gosh, there's another point where he says something about that. You know, it's tough to stop being a human being. I mean, in a certain way, that's what he wants us to do. At least our usual idea of a human being is, engaged in social relationships and made happy by them, or sad by them, or happy at their fortune, or sad at their misfortune. That it takes practice to gain the level of detachment that he says is necessary to be happy, to be undisturbed. But there's certain things that we can do to practice. I always like number 4 too. When you are going about any action, remind yourself what nature the action is. If you are going to bathe, picture yourself the things which usually happen in the bath. Now he's thinking about the public baths, where people bathe together. Some people splash the water, some push, some use abusive language, and others steal. Thus, you will more safely go about this action if you say to yourself, "I will now go bathe and keep my own mind in a state conformable to nature," and in the same manner with regard to every other action. For thus, if any hindrance arises in bathing, you will have it ready to say, "It was not only to bathe that I desired, but to keep my mind in a state conformable to nature, and I will not keep it if I am bothered at things that happen." It's actually, I think, pretty good advice. I mean, you get on the subway to go to work or school, and guess what? There are crazy people in the subway. There are rude people in the subway. There's trash that people left behind in the subway. The subway sometimes gets stuck between stations, and there's nothing you can do about it. All these things you knew before you left to get on the subway. So if you knew that this is what the subway can be like, that these things often happen, then why are you getting upset about it? It's not like some outrage that's happening. It's the way life is, and you didn't just want to get on the subway and get to work or school. You wanted to, as he says, keep your mind in a state conformable to nature. That is a state of non-disturbance. Um, Lastly, I mean, these opening ones are just golden. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. And so ultimately, we are not disturbed or negatively affected or by the things themselves. We are disturbed or negatively affected by our responses to those things. So it's those responses that we should be, not the appearances, but our own responses that we should be concentrating on. And then he says, death, for instance, is not terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates, of course. To him, Socrates, who lived already 600 years before him, was a great hero. Death is not terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. Yeah, I mean, nothing, I would suppose, even death, is really inherently scary or even inherently joyful or, happy. It all depends on us. And so little in life do we have control over. But what we do have control over, Epictetus would say, we have control over absolutely. And that is ourselves. And with regard to the world of appearances, the world that we confront every day, What we have control over, he would say, is our responses to things.